Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thanks for joining this HCMX Release Readiness webinar. So let's get started. So myself, Alex Dominic Savio, I'm one of the product manager for HCMX products. And today we are going to see the new features that we are going to release as part of the HCMX 2021.02 release. As per the plan, we plan to release in a couple of days. So let me start with the introduction and then I'll go to the demo. So just a little, disclaimer here. So we will be talking about uh, touching upon some roadmap items. Of course, the futures, whatever you're seeing, whatever you're going to see are yet to be released. And if something that we are talking on the lines of roadmap, those are all subject to change. Just a regular disclaimer here. Okay, so what is today's agenda? So little housekeeping things, which I'll just walk you through it. And then the main agenda is the release updates for 2021-02. That includes the service fulfillment, financial management, and migration. And we have introduced cool new features as part of these three main areas. And I'm going to explain that and then going to give a demo as well. And of course, you can post your questions in the Q&A. And just for the internal field team, we are going to have a separate field Q&A. Please feel free to join there and then post your questions. So again, I see there are like a couple of new customers, and thanks for joining. So primarily this webinar, it's more of a HCMX user forum, and now we are using this forum for the quarterly release webinars as well. And the general audiences are like the business owners, the technical practitioners, and of course the Micro Focus partners and internal employees. And for those who are for those who have joined newly, or if you want anyone to join this forum, we are having a registration link, and you can share that with them, and they can actually join the forum, as well as they can attend these regular cadence webinars. And so far we have completed 6+ webinars, and recently we did a webinar on the web workflow designer, and then another topic on how to add script to validate the password. So those are the two topics, but today, as I mentioned, we are going to cover the new features that we plan to introduce in the HCMX 2021-02. And this HCM forum, as I mentioned, it is going to be a combination of the release readiness and also our regular technical practitioner sessions that will keep continuing, and you must have already got some invites for those sessions as well. And along with that, we are having similar sessions for our ESM release readiness, and these are all some of the important dates. And I think we completed a few things yesterday, and today we are here for the HCMX release readiness. Okay, so if you look at the journey of HCMX, last year, February, this time frame, we released a 2020-02 beta version of HCMX, and then we onboarded a few customers for an early preview, and then really got good inputs and feedback. And then we did some HCMX CA release, primarily focusing on to introduce the design and deploy capability. Again, we really got very good inputs, and then we incorporated those as part of the product. And primarily it was more towards introducing the new end user portal, the new way of creating the governance based offerings, and then plugging in the design and deploy module as part of it. And then in the 2020-08, we introduced the GA version of HCMX, plus as part of it, we introduced the Cloudcast reports and the Cloud Insights, which is a new feature that we are progressively introducing enhancements. That includes again recommendations for the reserved instance. And then in 2020.11, we introduced image aggregation for public cloud providers as well as the private cloud provider. And public cloud, we introduced AWS and Azure, and for private cloud we introduced the vCenter. In addition to it, we did a couple of enhancements on the cloud spend limits, and also we introduced few content packs for the HCMX for the cloud provisioning. And then now we are in 2021.02, and we are going to see what are the new features that we are planning to introduce as part of this 2021.02. Well, before I go into the actual the demo as well as the presentation for the 2021.02, I just want to give a highlight on HCMX and what it does and all the stuff. So as you see on the screen on the left side, you see it's a diamond diagram, and you must have seen this a lot, but just I want to highlight. So our ITOM consists of like a four main pillars. That includes the service management, which actually relates to the ITSM capabilities, comes from the SMX, and then the service assurance, it comes from the monitoring capability, which relates to the ops bridge or ops bridge management tools. That include that has like several set of tools, primarily focusing on the monitoring. And then the service governance, again, we include the data center automation for the patching and compliance, and then the service fulfillment, where HCMX provides the complete feature sets for the service fulfillment. And what are the different features that we having part of this? HCMX are the orchestrate fulfillment, enforce governance, and simplify consumption. And these are the top use cases that we have as part of it, which has broader set of features. Like for example, if you take the orchestrate fulfillment, we have wide variety of supporting public cloud as well as the private cloud the cloud vendors like VMware, most of the hypervisors. In fact, we recently introduced the Nutanix and other set of hypervisors that supports on the private cloud. On the public cloud, we introduced AWS, Azure, and GCP, and we plan to extend that to Oracle Cloud, where we have a content, and even we have content for Ali Cloud. And then we have a feature called multi-cloud aggregation, primarily focusing on for the IT admin or a catalog administrator, how quickly they can create an offering out of the cloud services, which are coming from a different marketplace portal of different public cloud like AWS and Azure, where these public cloud vendor provides thousands and thousands of services, where it'll all be aggregated in one single UI, and then the IT admin can just search through the offering, do a side-by-side comparison for the pricing and other aspects, and then create the offering quickly. And then comes the core IP of HCMX, which is nothing but the service design, where the IT admin or the person who is nothing but the automation engineer can actually create a full stack application deployment or a simple compute with storage and network, to create a deployment blueprint. This particular service design is being used. And not only that, if the IT admin wants to enhance the cloud services, they can simply use the aggregation feature to automatically create the design and then further enhance it to add more number of automation, as well as to add more number of components in the same design to create a single offering. So all these are backed up by our the engine called operation orchestration, where the complete set of automation comes from that, and we include like thousands of libraries and with the strong lifecycle management inbuilt. And that's broader set of features that we have as part of the orchestrate fulfillment. And then comes the enforce governance, where we primarily focus on how well we are handling the workflow process. In fact, like we have a dedicated workflow for doing the multi-level approvals, conditional based approval, and policy based approval. And we have got rules which can automatically change any of the values on the fly before the user access the offering, or like even after they submit, the product can actually handle the data and change any of the values or set any of the values. I'm just giving an example on the rules. And transparency into cloud spending, like who's spending what, where, and how much, and download the data to further analyze or to bill your customers. And then comes the reserved instance recommendation, which focuses on to understand like how much is the saving I can get when I can convert a pay-as-you-go instance into the reserved instance. I'm sorry. And then you'll also get the list of instances that are potential candidate to be converted as a reserved instance. And then we have an underlying data model where all the resource configuration items will get stored, and in the native service asset and configuration management, we have a dependency graph which gives the complete picture of what you've deployed and the dependency between the resources. And then comes the simplify consumption, where we bring in the unified portal which has the AI-based capability, where it involves the machine learning and also a virtual agent which can interact with the end user as a conversation mode or in the technical form, whatever the IT wants to present it to their end user. Along with that, the end user also can get access to the mobile app to raise a request and track the request. And then the IT admin can publish a wide variety of offerings with different categories, which are can be accessed based on the roles, and the end user can request for the service, and a subscription can be created, and then they can manage the subscription from one single portal. So these are a broad set of categories, and of course we can go beyond this. This is just in a nutshell. I'm just highlighting here before I focus on the 2021.02 release. Okay, so let's go into the service fulfillment area, where we have introduced or enhanced the pause and resume feature. As you all know, in the previous release, we introduced the pause and resume feature for the provisioning and deprovisioning lifecycle. So what is the feature all about, and how does it help the IT admin or the end user? So let me give an example here. Like if the end user is requesting for a service, and that service consists of 10 steps, and assuming that this feature doesn't exist, what happens in a typical scenario when the request fails? So assuming that it fails at the 8th step, there is no way they can actually go back to the step 8 and resume from there if this feature doesn't exist. And all they have to do is to rerun the request, and then again it has to go through the process of executing from step 1 to step 10, and that is going to be a time consuming process for the end user. And even for the operator, they will be helpless, because they won't be able to fix the issue and then resume from the step that it is failed. But now with this feature, we are bringing an option for to configure the design in such a way that if any of the request fails on any given step, automatically it can pause that particular request, and then it will alert the IT operator in the UI, like the way how you're seeing in the screen. And then the IT operator can go into the operation orchestration console to see where exactly the issue is, or even on the same operations console, they should be able to identify the issue, and then they can fix it, and they will have an option to rerun the failed action, or they can skip the action. For example, if it involves some third-party software where they are fixing something on the third-party software, they don't really come and rerun the action typically, because the operator would have already fixed it, and they can just skip the action which failed, and the further the action should get executed. Maybe like in the 8th step, it is going and connecting some third-party software, and then if it is already fixed, they don't need to rerun the 8th step. They can start from the 9th step, and that's where they can use the skip failed actions. But if they are fixing something on this particular tool, and that's example I'm going to give, like for example, you are changing the service account every 3 months, and then it get expired, and the user the operator forgot to update. Just a typical a scenario I'm just giving as an example, and then it fails, and then the operator can go just reset the password, and then rerun the failed action. That will go start the provisioning. So that's the concept of this pause and resume. But now we are introducing in this release the option for even to set this configuration for the modify. So whenever the end user runs any modify operation, and if it fails, it can pause there, and then the operator can go fix the issue, and they can have a choice of rerunning the failed actions, or skip the action and then continue with the rest of the actions. So that's the feature that we are introducing in the 2021.02 with respect to the pause and resume as part of the service fulfillment. And then comes the content part, where we are introducing 2 new additional contents for the Google Cloud Platform. As you all know, we have introduced Google Cloud Platform Compute content, as well as the capsule, where we bring out of the box designs to provision compute on the Google Cloud Platform, and also deprovision and then manage. like the same way, we can also now create the database, and GCP provides support for multiple database, as you see on the screen: MySQL, Postgres, and SQL. And this content can help to create this database, manage, and then undeploy the database. And same goes for the storage, where the GCP bucket can be created and can be updated and can be deleted. And these operations comes out of the box, in the sense like as part of the content which are available, which will be made available in the item marketplace portal. So, and for the user experience, wherein we have enhanced at the operations level, where now the operator have some option to filter the instances, whatever you're seeing on the screen, and then they can locate the right request and to go debug or to find what is happening in that request, or even to track it. And also we have provided an option to filter those events or the instances based on the state, as you see on the screen, so they can rightly locate immediately to go do some debugging or to track it. So another enhancement is on the CMS side. When I say CMS, it is more close towards the SACM enablement. So we all know that in the back office, there is an option to enable the CMS, the native SACM, I mean to say. So assuming that customer is running this HCMX for a while, and then they must have created some resources, and then later they introduce the CMS into the picture, and then they want to enable the native SACMs, and that's when the existing CIs needs to be migrated to the CMS, so that it actually populates the service dependency in the native SACM. And the once you enable it, automatically the migration of data will happen, and you need to have a report in place. And in the previous releases, we did not provide any report, but now we have a report for the UI level, as well as we have an option to download it as a JSON file. It can be used for to check it using some APIs or through automation to verify and validate if all the items have been migrated to the CMS. So it's for both UI tracking as well as for the automation, it can be used. And then comes the financial management. Before I go into what we've introduced, but I want to highlight like what we introduced in the previous release. Of course, we highlighted this in the previous webinar, but I just want to reiterate here. So we have a fully baked financial management feature that exists in the product, which can help you to define the accounting periods or the financial periods, and even the rules to enable to track the expenses, and even setting the cost center for the user as well as for the provider, right? So these expense lines can be generated when a consumer goes and raise a request, which means the consumer will have their own cost center, and as well as the provider will have their own cost center. So again, if the consumer goes and raise a request, the money from the consumer cost center should be debited, and then it should be credited to the provider cost center, and that transaction should be captured somewhere, and that's where the expense lines helps you to capture it. And in this release, what we are providing is an option to compare between the expense and the budget. So you can set the budget, and once the expense lines gets created, it will give you a picture of like what is your budget and what's your current expenses, whether the what your remain. So this will give you a picture of like what is the remaining budget, whether it is overspend or expenses or within the budget. So that will give a clear idea for the operator to understand where exactly the budget is. I mean, what is the current status, and where are the spends, or using the expense line, they will be able to identify that. And I'm going to give a detailed demo on this. And then migration, it's definitely a special topic, because we are now focusing on migrating the customers from our install base like CSA and HCM to the HCMX, and we are giving multiple drops which are used in the pre-prod, and then by end of the next release, hopefully as per the plan, we should be able to come up with a fully baked migration tool as per the plan. But with this initial drop, we are providing an option to migrate the resource providers, and then followed by that, we will also be providing the migration toolkit with the option to migrate the subscriptions with the complete status, and also the current instance state, whatever is available in the CSA or HCM, it can be migrated to the HCMX. But you may be finding that what happens to the rest of the artifacts. And to be honest, we are providing manual and semi-automated and fully automated migration. So the fully automated is what I just explained, where we are migrating the resource provider and the subscription, which are the crucial aspects, because we have seen customers who are using hundreds of resource providers for their different data centers. So it is not possible for them to migrate manually. So we provide those options as part of the migration toolkit. Likewise, for the subscription, we have customers who are having 30,000 plus subscription, and it is impossible for them to even migrate that with any of the API, or in the sense like the native API. So we provide an option to migrate using the migrate API tool. But yeah, sooner or later we'll be introducing the CLI to wrap this API also. But the other artifacts, like for example design or a content, we have an option to export it from the tool itself, meaning the CSA and HCM provides an option to export these artifacts, and then the HCMX also allow the user to import those artifacts into the HCMX, and then they can start to use it. And the other things which you may have to do manually are to create the organization, create the tenant customer in the back office, and then onboard the users, and then give their roles and responsibilities to give the right access to the end user as well as the IT operator. So those are some of the manual activity that the during the migration process that customer may have to go through. But otherwise it's pretty much handy for to migrate the subscription and the resource provider and the other artifacts. So I think now it's a good time to go into the demo. So I don't see any questions so far. So let me go into the demo and then show you things one by one. Okay, so I'm into the end user portal. So the first thing I want to show you is the modify pause on subscription. So here I have already created a subscription, and then I can see it here in the end user portal, and this is the subscription. And I want to initiate a modify request to create a number of additional VMs. So I'm just going to add a couple of VMs. Okay, so here if you look at, I want to have one more VM added to this cluster and with the same size, and I'm going to submit this, and this will go through the modify operation. And then as a IT admin, I can track it at the operations level. So in few seconds, it will automatically send the request here, and then it will start to execute. As you see on the screen, now it is in the in progress state. And now again in few seconds, it will start to modify, and then it will fail. And then once it fails, it should pause there, and then it should allow me to fix the issue and resume. And that's the feature that I am planning to show now. And while it is doing, what I can do is maybe I can show you the filter options and other features that we have introduced. Like for example, if you look at here in the events, I have an option to get the list of properties, and I can hide the empty properties, of course, and also it gives me the complete information of the events. So let me go into the newly the VM that is newly getting created, and this is where I can actually keep a track of like what's happening behind the screen. And in the OO, I should, yeah, it has failed. Good, that's what I'm expecting. So I can see that so it's automatically giving an alert that it is failed, and it's giving an option to resume the modification or reset the modification or fail the modification. Of course, like if it is going to continue to fail and I have no other go to fix it, I can always go back to its good old state, in the sense the status of the subscription, where I can click on the reset modification, which will go and set it to the original state of the subscription, which is active. Or if I think that, if I feel that it's nowhere going to become an active subscription, and I may need more time, or I may want to set this to fail, I can use this option to set the subscription as the failure state so that I can go and do more debugging, or like, I can tell the user, whoever is requested, that this cannot be fixed and maybe they have to take some other course of actions. So I have multiple options here, but let me go and find like what is exactly the issue. So I go into the O to find like what exactly the issue, and I see that it's an incorrect username and password. So now I realize that I need to go reset the password because it's a service account, and that needs to be fixed. So I go into the provider, and then quickly I can reset the password in the vCenter. So let me take my password here. So now I can go fix it. So because this is within the tool, I'm fixing it. So I'm going to rerun the failed action. But if it is, as I mentioned, a third-party tool where I can fix the issue and I can come and skip that, the failed step, and then start from, the next step. But yeah, I just fixed it by resetting the password. Now I'm going to resume the modification where I get an option to rerun the failed actions, and I click on yes. So it's going to continue to execute the request, and it will now work because I've just reset the password. So it will take a couple of seconds to continue, and it has just started to deploy. So let it go. And then now I want to showcase the next part, which is the GCP. So before that, I want to show one more thing where in the service designer, you have an option to set this configuration. Of course, in the previous webinar, we did show how to set this configuration for the pass and resume. So in the design level, by default, it will all be set as fail on errors, but the author, the service design author, can always choose to select the configuration, whether they want to make this option enabled, where if it fails, the provisioning can pause, or modification can pause, or cancellation can pause. So these are all something the service design author can actually choose at the time of publishing, and then it will reflect in the provisioning time, or modification time, or cancellation time. Okay, well, so now I'm going to go back to the service or orchestration designer, which is nothing but the workflow designer, to show you the Google Cloud Platform database and storage. So if you look at the library section, I have deployed the GCP here. So I mean, of course, I've deployed all the cloud modules, but let me focus on GCP. So as you see on the screen, I have got already the compute, which brings in a lot of operations and out of the box workflows, and you can always use these operations to create your own workflows, of course. And the same goes for the database as well as for storage. So if you look at the database, these are all like simple workflows which can deploy a SQL instance. It could be MySQL or Postgres or SQL, and you can do the lifecycle actions for the SQL instance, like start, stop, and restart, and then you can update anything on the SQL instance, and then finally you can also undeploy. And similarly, you can also use the flow to create the storage bucket and update and delete, and it brings set of operations which will allow you to create your own workflows in any of the other workflow that you're creating it. So that's very much possible. So here I have created a simple workflow which actually can deploy a SQL instance, and then it can also create a storage. So let me take an example of deploy database, and just for the demo purpose, I have already hard coded the values here. So if you look at, have done some value that I have already hard coded. So let me not go into the details. It's similar to the compute of properties. So I'm going to now click on the debug. So yeah, this is something, it will come. The reason being, I'm using some of the AFL operations, so it is prompting me to enter the username and password for the central. But as you know that we have started to introduce the new set of operations, or new set of contents or capsules in the cloud slang format, and that's what we will continue to do. And this is existing content, so we are continuing to add it, but yeah, we will be even converting this into the cloud slang as well. Okay, so now it's going to create the database on the Google Cloud platform. In a couple of seconds, you should be able to see it. Maybe what I can do is in my Google GCP, let me see if it's already starting to trigger. That will give an indication that the content is already working with the GCP to create these instances. Yeah, I think, yeah, it is just starting to create. This is the same request I just triggered from the content, and it's just rotating. That means it is actually creating. So let me not disturb that. So let it go, and then we can actually come back and see if it is all provision good. And same goes for the storage as well. So it'll automatically go create the storage, and same set of parameters you may want to pass, but the name of the bucket and all the stuff might change. But otherwise, the connection properties remains almost same, where you can also define it at the configuration properties level, and then you can set it, or you can define it the global properties, and you can call it anywhere inside the operation. So that's the second demo as part of this webinar I wanted to show. And then comes the budget, and the expense lines. So let me go into the main module where you see the financials. So if you go to the financials, you have an option to cater to a large enterprises, but typically they will define a fiscal years where you can say like FY 18, 19, 20, or like beyond 2021, 22, and beyond that, right? So you can define the fiscal year and the start date and the end date, and then you can also define accounting periods like FY 21 Q1. So you can also define the quarter by quarter uh, in order to track the expenses also per the fiscal year. And then you can define the accounting codes, like whether it's a debit or a credit. As I mentioned, if it is a debit, it'll automatically keep a track of like it is debiting from the end user's cost center, and then it is crediting to the provider cost center, simple transaction. And then we bring in the cost allocation rule. Again, you may find the rules for even other set of artifacts that includes the contract or like license, which may not be directly related to the HCMX, but for SMAX, of course. But you may want to focus on subscription, as you see on the screen here. You see that there are two subscription, of course. One is with the recurring cost, and another one is with the single one-time cost. So I'm going to take an example of recurring, and then I'm going to show some examples there where I have already defined like what is the start date and the end date. And if you go into the cost allocation, and of course you don't need to make any changes here because the rules are already preset, and like filters are already preset. It's all the internal inbuilt variables comes in handy, and then we just use it at the filter level. Like for example, this cost allocation rule should get executed whenever the entity goes into the active state, and if that offering has got like recurring cost, and then it has initiate, and the initiated by offering is not null. So this is a simple rule, and then automatically these allocation rules will get executed. Like for example, what is the recurring amount, what is the initial amount, what is the recurring amount, which will automatically fetch from the offering, including the currency, and then from where I need to debit, from which cost center, and what are the cost type, and where I should credit to which cost center, and what are the cost type. So all this stuff, it's all predefined, and all we need to do is just set the cost center. Like for example, I can go into the cost center, create cost center for the consumer as well as the provider. Like for example, if I go here, I have created like one cost and two cost centers, one for the consumer and one for the provider. And then where do I set these cost centers? So I can go into the for the service provider, it's obviously at the offering level you will set the cost center, because the offerings can be set per audience. Maybe you have a different audience for different offerings, so you may want to set different cost centers also. So if I go into the offering catalog, so I can just simply take this, and then you will see that I have already set the cost center for this offering. If you go to the financial information, I have set the cost center here, and of course the cost type as well. Where do I set the cost center for the users. So I go into the people, and then you will see an option to set the cost center. Sorry if there is any question that I need to listen to. Okay, I'll come to this question in a while. So let me go into the end users UI where I can set the cost center. So I can go into the organizational information, and then here is where actually I can set the cost center. So it's pretty straightforward steps. And once you define this, and whenever the end user requests, like here, if you look at in the catalog, I have uh, an offering where I have already defined some, uh, you know, um, cost or the price, right? And if I raise a request, and automatically, and of course, like if you can define a weekly cadence or a monthly cadence or yearly cadence, and accordingly the expense lines will get created. Like for example, uh, you know uh, for my testing purpose, and just giving an example here, and I may want to choose like next 5 weeks I want to use this. So it will create two different types of expense lines. That's what I'm going to show you. I'm just going to leave all this as it is, and then I'm going to go with some default values because my focus is to show you the expense lines. So I have already set the cost center for the offering, and I have set the cost center for this user who is requesting also. So now automatically this tool is going to take care of creating the expense lines, and also uh, taking care of the transaction between the consumer and the provider. So now it is submitted. It will go through the process of provisioning, and then further it will go and create the expense lines. And let me go show where it exactly creates the expense lines. It goes to the financials, and in the financials you have expense lines. So here is where it creates all the expense lines for all the subscriptions. And as you know, I mean, of course, you may not be able to identify which subscription, and of course you can use the filter to do it. But if you want to find the individual subscription expense lines, you can go to the service asset and configuration management UI, and then you can look for the subscription. So let me just go into the business service, and then I can filter for subscription. And then maybe I can just uh, let me see if I got this expense lines created. Sorry. So I go into the finance. Um, okay, so looks like I don't have any expense lines. Let me go down. Maybe this. Yeah, here we have like number of expense lines is, but you see like there are a lot of expense lines, and why there are two different status, incurred and projected. So incurred or the expense lines where it's already done. I mean, I just requested like a few days before, and then it started to put the expense lines. And projected or something it's going to happen in the future, because when I request the service, I requested for like 5 weeks. So if I sort this, it is more of like, it tells me that I requested like 23rd, and then it automatically created those transactions for both debit as well as the credit, as because it debited the money from the the consumer, and then it credited, and these are the transaction it just logged, and it just 2 weeks over, and the remaining weeks is what it actually projecting. It's more of a forecast for you as well, and that's the expense line it just created for every subscription which has cost center associated. And then where do we get the budget, and the budget versus the expense lines, and that's what I'm going to show you. So here, if you look at in the financial module, you can set the budget, and of course you can set the budget for any organization or sub-organization. So here I just took an example to set the budget here, and then if I go into a sample of this budget and budget lines, you see that I get a nice graph to explain the expense versus the budget. And then of course it is just populated only with the remaining budget, but if there is any overspend, it will automatically come, and I can filter, and then of course I can export, and then send it to the stakeholders, and even the budget lines also get automatically created over here. So this is something which we are which we are introducing in the 2021.02 release. So please explore, and then let us know any feedback or any enhancement that we want to make as part of this. Okay, so well, that covers the third demo segment of the demo, and maybe let me just want to go and see what more. So I just covered the pause and resume GCP database, operation UI filters. It's just more of like for information, the SACM enhancement, and then budget, financial management, and the migration is the last piece. So I have a video. It's more of a technical thing. Of course, I can do it, but it's going to take some time. So that's why I just created a video. So in this video, I'm going to show you like what are the different APIs that are available for the migration. Especially now we are focusing on to migrate the resource providers, and what are the different APIs that we are bringing as part of the migration toolkit. So here you're seeing a list of APIs, like list the resource provider from the source. So which is the source here? The source it could be CSA or HCM, and then of course the target will be the HCMX. But I need to list the sources, and I need to have an API, and that's what is API all about. So let me go so if you look at one second. Okay, so if so what it does is like it does a list, and then this is what you're seeing, and then finally it goes into a pre-check. And let me just do a fast forward. The pre-check is more towards to ensure that it completes the migration successfully without having any anything that goes wrong during the migration. So it just does all the pre-check which are included. And as you see on the screen, after I execute the pre-check, it's all now passed and ready for the migration. So now I'm going to do the migration. So I'm going to the agent interface to show you the list of providers. So if you look at, there are only 4 different providers, and this is my CSA where I want to migrate these 2 resource providers into the HCMX. And let me go into the API portal to trigger the migration. Of course, I'm going to pass the resource provider ID and all the information required for the migration, and then I'm just giving the data and triggering it. So it will do a migration, and while it is migrating, I should be able to keep a track of like what's happening. I mean, that's at the task level, and then I can keep a track, and then once it's completed, and then I can go and check if it is all completely migrated. So I'm just, yeah, as you see now it's in the pending state, and then sooner or later it'll go into the next state, and then finally it will be completed. So yeah, it's now telling that migration initiated, and migration is now success. And then now I can go to the both the task of migrating both the providers are done now. So let me go into the HCMX and then refresh the screen, and you will see the 2 providers appearing over here. So as you see that from CSA, we are able to migrate 2 resource provider into the HCMX. So that completes the migration. Of course, you will have followed demos, and we are doing a lot of internal demos to our internal teams and even for the customers. And we show our progress, and we are happy to engage with you all to show the progress that we are making on the migration. Well, actually, that completes the demo for 2021.02. But let me go into the questionnaires. So let me go read the question. The first question: does this feature exist for new subscription as well? I believe you're talking about the budget management or the finance management, or the pause and resume. I'm sorry. I hope it is. I believe it is pause and resume. Okay, good. So yeah, this is this feature is currently going to be available in the 2021.02 for the subscription. Yes. And yes, it is. So the pause and resume is not for day 2 operations currently. It is for provisioning, modifying, and deprovisioning. Okay, let me read the next question, which is GCP brokering and cost management coming. Yes, of course, it's in the roadmap. And GCP brokering, we have got I mean, we have made a nice, very good progress where we can actually showcase this to the customer from our development environment to get more feedback. And as per the roadmap, we plan to introduce in the upcoming release. But yeah, roadmap subject to change. But yeah, we are making a very good progress on our brokering, which is nothing but the image aggregation, and we have plans to introduce the cost management in the upcoming release. I mean to say the future releases. Okay, so are there any additional questions? Or maybe I can unmute and then see if there are any questions from you all.
Hey, Alex, this is Rajesh.
Hey, hi,
So this expense and budget line is defined for in each organization, or can be defined? Can you
yes.
add a tag for a business organization, business team as well?
Oh, it is for each tenant level. This financials comes for each
Okay.
tenant. Yeah.
Is there a way? Is there a plan to add a tag or something so that if we want to identify which business organizations this subscriptions belongs to, and and the expense, if it can aggregate the expense based on the business org instead of
Yeah.
one whole complete org?
Yes. Yes, it is. It is already there actually. I can show offline. I mean, yeah. I mean, we can. I can expand that in the next session that we are going to meet right after this internal. I can definitely showcase that.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Good set of questions. Thanks. And I'm going to keep it open for like a couple of minutes, and then I can give back like 10 minutes of your time, and then we can internal field team. I mean, we can all meet in the next session in the common forum. Okay, good. So if there are no questions, so great. So let's then wrap it up, and then just a highlight. As I mentioned, like, we are using the user forum for the release readiness webinar, but we are going to continue the technical practitioner forum on the same webinar, and we have planned for a few more webinars in this month as well, in the next coming months also. So do attend, then you will be able to get more information directly from the R&D as well as the product management, and even others who are actually practicing HCMX, and they may be able to give more information which can help you during your implementation, or even to understand like what we're doing in the product. Well, I think that's pretty much I wanted to cover, and thanks a lot for joining this day. And then glad that we have a very good attendance today, and have a great rest of the day. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.